welcome to our viewers. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today, The Ultimate Strategy for Protecting Your Customers' Data Against Ransomware. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Paul for some brief introduction.
Thanks very much, Audrey. I appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today to discuss ransomware and the things that we're seeing in the market. We've got a very distinguished group here that's going to speak with you today. So I'm delighted that Dave Russell, the VP of Enterprise Strategy at Veeam, is joining us, and he's going to bring a lot of insight into what Veeam are doing to protect data and help us all. We're also joined by Jon Toor, and Jon is the Chief Marketing Officer of Cloudian. Cloudian is a leading storage vendor in the market. We have a partnership with Cloudian. And myself, the co-founder of HostedBizz. So HostedBizz is an infrastructure as a service cloud provider. So between us, there's some experience and expertise, and we want to really give you the opportunity to ask questions, and to we'll go through some prepared material here to discuss ransomware. So from an agenda perspective, we're going to discuss ransomware threats. Ransomware threats come in a variety of different approaches. So we're going to talk about the threats we're seeing collectively in the market. We're going to introduce the concept of object lock, which is a way of further protecting your data. So we're going to talk at some length about what that is and how to use it. We're going to talk, just introduce HostedBizz, give you a flavor of the capabilities that HostedBizz have, and what we're doing in partnership with Cloudian and with Veeam. And then we're going to talk about things we're seeing in the market. So, how are customers getting attacked, how are they dealing with it, and the type of trends, the way that the market is evolving. And then, as Audrey said, that we're happy to take any questions. Ask a question anytime during the presentation, and we'll answer it during the presentation, or we'll answer it at the end. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Dave to give an introduction on ransomware threats.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate that. And what I want to do is just take you through a few facts and figures, not, sort of just by... Can you not hear me? No, you're good. Oh, okay, sorry. We just want to take you through a few facts and figures just to kind of highlight how real the challenge is. John and I were just chatting just before we went on air, actually, about how in a relatively short amount of time, just the changes that we've seen, the increases that we've seen, I kind of somewhat referred to it as that right now current circumstances are a bit of a petri dish for bad actors, meaning we almost have this perfect storm, but in the most negative way. Now, if you just unpack this just a little bit.
No, I got him here.
Yep, sounds like maybe just Paul isn't hearing us, so I'll just soldier on. What we see here, if you look at the average cost, bear in mind, this is average cost, is a fantastic amount of money here. This is in USD or US dollars, 133,000. So obviously that we know of some things that are higher. If you just go diagonally down to the lower right, City of Atlanta spends over $5 million to rebuild their infrastructure after an attack. And we've seen headlines this year in 2020 that highlight some of this as well. One of the ones that I think is really shocking, if you just go over in the lower left there, ransomware attacks have increased nearly 100%, nearly double in the past 2 years. There's been discussion in 2020 that where we sit now, just as we begin to approach November, that we've had a significant rise just compared to where we sat January of this year in terms of increase in attacks. The one I think is amazing, and really the two remaining factoids that I think are just frightening, if nothing else, is that just last year, a new organization was fallen victim to ransomware every 14 seconds. That's just phenomenal. But it's projected that by next year, which is only a few months away, that will fall by 3 seconds to every 11 seconds. And you might say, well, but if we're doing good things, if we're having good security hygiene, we're going to be fine. Well, the middle data point, I think, shows just how concerning this can be, meaning 3/4 of companies that were infected were actually up to date on their endpoint protection. It's a kind of a myth that, oh, you only get attacked, you're only vulnerable if you had a lapse in your antivirus software, your endpoint threat prevention detection definitions or signature files. And that actually turns out not to fully be the case. So why is that? Well, the changing threat landscape, or I sometimes like to say threatscape, kind of munge together those two words. Phishing attacks are a predominant means of entry into the organization, meaning you have perimeter security at your business. You certainly have IT security, but phishing attacks against your employees in particular are the highest vulnerability that we see. And in fact, Veeam this year hired a chief information security officer. He was the CISO at Citibank, and prior to that was actually safeguarding the United States' nuclear weapons globally dispersed against cyber threats. His belief is that over 70% of the threatscape could be distilled into phishing attacks, which are basically looking for human weaknesses. It's almost social engineering as much as anything else. So I know at Veeam and our support, we have a SWAT team once we identify that we've got a ransomware cyber threat, and basically what we find is that more often than not, somebody, an employee, clicked on something that they really shouldn't have. And I really speak to the next piece. It's malicious links that are found in these phishing emails that are everything from a spoof to upgrade certain software to click on this attachment, here's an invoice, to preying on people around COVID and other current world condition issues. And then because of world conditions, many of us obviously now working remotely, some of us scrambling to do so because that wasn't really the nature of our daily activity. But public Wi-Fi, public hotspots, people looking literally over your shoulder as well as virtually eavesdropping, device security, all of these things have led to a very, very different reality compared to what we experienced really just a couple handful of months ago. Did mention human error, and human error is one of the most challenging areas within this whole notion. It can be the weakest link in the chain. So it can be, obviously, more often than not, very inadvertent, very unintended, but nonetheless potentially highly disastrous. Just a general lack of awareness. Are people running virtual private networks now that they're remote? Are they inserting different things into their different devices, meaning portable media? Conversely, do we have bad actors that were actually currently or once on our payroll, meaning malicious employees? And I've seen some situations this year where Veeam customers believe with a fair amount of certainty that disgruntled employees did present a very heightened threat for them, meaning that an inside job took place. And then this notion, as I alluded to, of USB keys, portable drives, people are even trying to do the right thing, meaning make backups perhaps locally on a USB drive, but potentially compromising themselves in the process. And with that, Paul, I want to kind of turn it over to you because let's double click on this remote workforce notion.
Yeah, so clearly, with the pandemic that's in place today, there's been a massive shift to people to work remotely. So all of these threats have really been escalated even further because people are now outside of the physical control of IT departments and so on. And I've pulled together some statistics here that I thought were very interesting for Canada. 4.7 million Canadians have moved to remote working since March 2020, which is a massive increase. So that's increased the number to nearly 7 million in total. So, clearly a 180% or so increase in the number of people working remotely. So 40% of all of Canadians' workforce are now currently working at home. So the challenges to ensure security and making sure that your company's data is safe has just become far greater. For all of the threats that Dave went through there, it's becoming more challenging to police that and make sure that the right practices are in place. So the other thing that we're also seeing is when new employees start working for the companies, that the general induction processes, the training, the cyber training in particular is just not in place for remote workers. These things just aren't happening. So the risks are getting far higher. So these are the things that we're seeing in the Canadian market. So I'll pass it back to Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Let's just unpack this a little bit, what this looks like, just very, very simplistically. The simple part is how we get from the left side to the right side. The part that's changing, though, is probably a couple-fold. Let's unpack that. So we obviously often engage in security awareness training. However, oftentimes the training doesn't do enough. In fact, I had a conversation with one of the support leads at Veeam, and I asked him, what would be your best advice? And he quite literally and quickly said to scare the living daylights out of the employees, to really impress upon them what the role is that they have to play, meaning what the threat actually is from a phishing attack. And in this day and age, there's training, there's work-life balance, there's concerns on various levels, and there's a bit of a fatigue that sets in. But what we're finding is we have to be ever vigilant against this, and bad actors are often increasing, not decreasing. So what starts to happen is eventually what was a fairly robust environment gets compromised through a lapse, usually unintended, an accident in employee awareness. And now two things are different. The bad actors are going after the backup data right off the bat. It used to be the production data was where they would attack. Maybe backups would get eventually examined, maybe not, often not. Now backups are considered a high priority target. And what we see happening is oftentimes this activity can lay dormant for a period of time, which leads us to the right-hand side there. Data is encrypted, preventing full recovery, with the very specific notion of what are you going to do? What's your fallback plan? Well, it's your backup and recovery system, so the bad actors are going after that first. So as with any security notion, really, it's not just one thing, meaning it's a multi-layered approach to trying to protect your data. Absolutely, there's physical protection, things like perimeter security, data center access, change of roles and responsibilities or delineation of that. That user awareness that I've mentioned several times, really can't emphasize that enough. And that awareness comes down to really a few different pillars here: education and continued education, testing. In fact, we have organizations that often do their own phishing attempts internally, trying to help uncover would employees accidentally click on emails that can leave them compromised. And then just communicating both the victories as well as the importance of trying to remain ever vigilant. But of course, last line of defense has always been the case in the data center is backup and recovery. And if we double click on that just a little bit, this now more than ever describes why having an off-site backup and disaster recovery as a service can be more important than ever. The ransomware threat is extremely active. It is non-discriminatory, meaning every business vertical, every company size, really every geography that I ever speak with is concerned about ransomware, and because they or those that they know have in their region have been compromised. So we mentioned ransomware is attacking now customer backup repositories. Having an offsite backup is what allows protection for that backup server so that immutable backups can't be compromised by ransomware. We're going to double click on that notion here in just the next slide with John. But the idea here is to ensure that you have a known, good state to roll back to, and that state is of known integrity, that you can restore in the cloud, roll back images, and bring them back onto customer infrastructure when required. And there's a bad joke in the industry that it's very difficult to restore data that you haven't backed up. The caveat I would say to that now, John, as I tee up your slide, is it's very difficult to restore data that hasn't been backed up and hasn't been properly protected.
That's exactly right, Dave, and that's what really the ransomware scammers are counting on, is the fact that once that data has been encrypted, your opportunity to restore from it is lost. So what you really need to do is to prevent that encryption from happening. And of course, as Dave said, you can do that with training, with perimeter defenses, and you and you absolutely need to do all those things. But when the bad guy eventually gets through, your last line of defense is to prevent that data from being encrypted at the storage level, and that's exactly what we do in partnership with Veeam. So at Cloudian, we make enterprise storage systems, highly scalable storage systems that are S3 compatible storage. So this is object storage that acts as a target for Veeam. So when you're backing up your data, the ultimate place it resides is on the Cloudian system. What we have added this year in partnership with Veeam is object lock. And this is a feature that makes the data unchangeable for a set period of time. And what that means is that once the data has been stored to Cloudian and the object lock policy has been applied, that data cannot be encrypted, so ransomware is ineffective. This is really powerful because what it means is that encryption capability, which is so critical to the whole ransomware process, no longer is a threat to you. The data is immutable, unchangeable, and that ultimately what that means is you have that clean copy to restore from that Dave was just referring to. This is a capability which is commonly called worm, and that the idea of write once, read many storage. The worm is an acronym, write once, read many. That capability has been around for a while, but it's never been this easy to use. Now it's part of an object storage system, so it's part of disk-based media. But Forrester identified this idea of worm as really one of the key pillars in a ransomware defense portfolio. You need to do all those other things as well. Obviously, you don't want ransomware getting in to start with, but you have to plan that it will get in, and this is one of the key one of the key pillars that Forrester identified in your ransomware portfolio. And the way it works is so simple, and it's so transparent to you and to the users. It's just really easy to do. So you use Veeam to back up your data. Veeam then applies that object lock policy. At that point, that data is unchangeable, so ransomware can't get in, and you have a clean copy for restore. But the other thing that's really exciting about this is Veeam is managing that policy over time. So you don't have to go in and do any kind of manual intervention about locking data, unlocking data. You remember the old days, Dave and I remember the old days of taking your tape out of the library and putting them on the shelf. That was kind of accomplishing the same thing, but at a very high cost of manual labor, plus you've got the issues about mechanical complexity and potential unreliability. This is all disk-based, software-based, completely reliable, and completely hands-off in terms of your management. So you get protection that's built in that just resides on your system and is there forever, right? Once you've got this thing in place, you always have a clean copy of data for restore. And that's really the bottom line on this whole thing. And I think Dave's going to tell us a little bit more about how this actually works.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I realized, I apologize, I actually made a highlight mistake on this slide. And in part, when you see that green box, just in your mind, shift that up into the middle checkbox. This is how easy it is to instrument this capability within a Veeam policy. This is not something that requires scripting, something that requires a great deal of configuration or parameters to understand. It is quite literally as simple as checking a box here in the middle of the screen. A workflow is very familiar to those that are used to using Veeam. The only thing you do is check the box that says make recent backups immutable for, and then you enter in the number of days. So all of that's doing, and John, in the past I've heard use a great analogy of essentially like a time vault, what you would experience at a bank, a physical bank, where the vault cannot be opened prior to a certain amount of time. And that is true for, in this case, a Veeam administrator cannot change that. There is no administrator, there is no credential that can overwrite that. It is literally enable with the checkbox, set a certain number of days, and from that point on, you are protected against accidents, against something malicious, against something that could even normally be compromised by someone that had root access, super user access, some level of credential. The goal here is to make it very much a part of your consistent and well-known policy, make it something that's not daunting, it's not laborious to do. In fact, it's just as easy to check that box as it is to uncheck it, meaning it's a seamless experience that we want. It's almost, why would you not engage in this activity? So let's look at this from a solution provider perspective. Multi-tenancy, and meaning the ability to ensure that you don't have commingling of data from potentially different business units, but different companies or organizations altogether. Different tenants, as you can see over on the left-hand side, can be protected from ransomware utilizing Veeam software on top of Cloudian capabilities. We preserve seamlessly together Veeam and Cloudian, honoring that object lock capability, that immutability that we've been referring to. That's just how easy it is. It's not something that even has to be considered on a daily backup basis. It's they set it as part of your policy, as part of your configuration, and know from that point on you're protected. It's a bit like if you could have your alarm system at home automatically arm without you having to remember, did you lock the door? Did you make sure you didn't bypass any zones? And then did you actually set the alarm? None of that is exposed. On an ongoing basis, you set this policy. From that moment on, it is a transparent capability, but one that has very, very real protection capabilities or notions associated with it, where internal or external threats can be well mitigated. And with that, John, I want to turn it back over to you to talk about this and the hard notion of this.
Yeah, right. Which is a very logical question. Is that's great. You're putting the data on the solution, which supposedly makes it immutable. How do I know, right? Obviously, if your solution can be hacked, it's not going to do me any good, right? Eventually, people will find a way around that, and that's the beauty of this. Is as Dave said, this is hardened to the point where even an administrator cannot circumvent it. Even somebody who has physical access to the box and can go plug into a serial port or a management port on the box can't hack around this. It is proven immutable, and it's been verified in government certification testing to the point where you can even put financial records on this, and they are in compliance with the SEC rules for non-rewritable, non-erasable media. So for financial records, healthcare records that, by law have to be protected, you can store them on this system and know that you're in compliance. We have a list of certifications as long as your arm, and I've only highlighted a few of them here. But the bottom line on this is, the agencies came in and looked at us and tested the system and tried to break it, tried to get in, tried to change the data, and they couldn't. And that's what you have to do to get these certifications. We are used by financial institutions. We are used by government agencies who are extremely concerned about data security, and every one of them went through endless due diligence to understand, the vulnerabilities of the system and concluded that this was a safe place to put their data. What all that means to you is that the hackers can't get in. They cannot get in and delete your data. They can't get in and encrypt it. Your data is safe, and that's really the bottom line. Is you can sleep better at night. We like to say that this provides the greatest value of all, which is peace of mind. There's no better value in the world than knowing that things are going to work and you're protected, and that's really what the certification is all about. So this is the exact solution which is deployed at HostedBizz, the Veeam and Cloudian solution. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave to tell us a little bit more about what HostedBizz is doing.
All right, so just as an introduction to HostedBizz, the company was founded in 2012, and we're a cloud infrastructure provider that sells our solutions through IT resellers, managed service providers, and IT VARs, and so on. So at this point in time, we've got around about 4,500 customers, primarily in Canada. And the company is headquartered in Ontario. We have 2 data centers in Ottawa, and we have a data center in Calgary as well. So, one of the things that we're very particular about is ensuring that we can provide a guarantee of Canadian data sovereignty to our customers in Canada, and that is a big issue for a number of end user customers that they want to ensure that their data stays in Canada, and also it's operating on infrastructure that is owned and operated by Canadian companies. So that's the commitment we make for our Canadian customers. And we've had a very long-term relationship with Veeam. We're a platinum cloud service provider. We have thousands and thousands of machines protected in our cloud using Veeam. We do like the product. It's very robust. And our engineering staff here at HostedBizz are very competent on Veeam. We've got a large number of accredited individuals on staff here, helping our partners and helping end users set up backup and DR infrastructure. And we also a partner with Cloudian for S3 compatible object storage. So all of our S3 compatible storage is running on Cloudian appliances. Again, that's a great relationship. We're delighted with the performance of the product. And we're delighted that using that product and using Veeam allows us to bring immutable backups to market in Canada. So great things we're doing with both of those companies in line with what was previously discussed here. One of the other things I did want to mention is that HostedBizz also supports something we call Ransom Protect. And what this allows us to offer our customers is if we're running backups that aren't immutable within our SANs, then what there is a finite possibility that these backups could get encrypted or they could get deleted by malicious hackers. And what we have at HostedBizz is we have a Ransom Protect capability where we move any deleted backups into a recycle bin, if you like, and we keep those backups in that recycle bin for 7 days. So if there's a malicious deletion or even an accidental deletion, equally as likely, we still have that data sitting on our storage arrays in the HostedBizz cloud that we can recover. So this is a service that we think adds real value to what we're doing with Veeam. And there's no charge for this. We provide this service to all of our customers that are using us for their cloud backups and offsite backups. And I think what we're going to do now is we're going to talk specifically, some of the other things we're seeing in the market with respect to Office 365 backup. So we're seeing a real appetite to back up Office 365. I think if you go back a few months, there was just general belief that your data was being backed up by Microsoft as part of their Office 365 process, but that's just not the case. So if you have data within an Office 365 environment or a Teams or a SharePoint environment that's deleted, 30 days later it's deleted forever. So this obviously gives real risk for malicious attacks or accidental deletions, disgruntled employees, and so on. So we've seen a real demand for Office 365 backup, and we're doing Office 365 backups using Veeam, and we're using the Cloudian as a storage target for doing our Office 365 backups. So why are we seeing this demand? Here's a list of 6 typical things we're seeing. So accidental deletion, I touched on. I think there's a lot of confusion about retention policy, legislative requirements, and so on. So having a perpetual backup of your Office 365 environment ensures that no data is ever deleted, and all of this data is retrievable on demand. So obviously this is going to give you protection against malicious insiders, departing employees. We've seen lots of examples where disgruntled employees are deleting all of their data as when they leave companies, and this obviously having a backup protects against that threat. You're also seeing ransomware attacks on data repositories, so having this capability makes a lot of sense as well. And we're also seeing people use Office 365 backup for when they migrate their data as well. So this Office 365 backup also works for hosted Exchange. So if you've got an Exchange environment and you want to move to Office 365, we've seen a lot of customers start the backup process on their physical Exchange servers, so that they get some comfort that if that migration has issues, then they've got a backup of the copy of that data. So these are the things that we're seeing in the market. I don't know if you want to add any comments on that, Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I think there are a couple of things come to mind. One is in terms of software as a service-based applications, Microsoft 365 is somewhat unique in that you can actually do something with that data. You think about other SaaS-based applications, you don't have the app. So you could save the data just for good housekeeping, safe harbor, and maybe you could kind of surgically go in and investigate things, get a phone number, get a contact, but it'd be very difficult to operate in normal operations. Well, with Microsoft 365, you've got OneDrive, you've got Outlook, you've got SharePoint. So if you've got the data, you've got the applications to get back into operation and to be productive. So that's one important reason. The other is just the uptake of this platform. Even prior to 2020, the uptake was kind of nothing short of amazing, but now due to the pandemic, the number of organizations that have radically shifted to or further embraced 365 has risen dramatically, putting even more importance on that data. And as you mentioned, Paul, there has been a fact that, well, isn't the provider protecting me? And in this case, there is some level of protection, but it's very, very unlikely that it's going to be the same level of granularity, the same service level, meaning go back as far as what you would have experienced with an on-prem capability.
Right. So one of the, obviously what we're delivering in terms of the backup for Office 365 is that customers can retrieve their data, emails, calendars, any email, forms, and so on, from a cloud-based repository. And these repositories are online, and this retrieval is can be achieved instantly, And then, one of the things that HostedBizz that we don't do is we don't charge for data egress and access. So, you can retrieve these files at will. And obviously, you can also then search and recover the items that you're looking for. And Veeam, since they first introduced Microsoft 365 backup, they've extended the capabilities so that we can now protect SharePoint repositories, Teams repositories, as well as OneDrive data as well. So we can create an all-encompassing backup solution around Office 365 and other things that are running on Azure. So we're seeing massive demand for this solution. We've got tens of thousands of mailboxes protected in our cloud, and the rate of adoption of Office 365 backup is really very impressive. It's probably growing about 5 or 6% per month in terms of new customer acquisition for us. So it's a high growth market, and obviously that demonstrates the real need for this type of capability. Going to move on now to talk more about what we can do with our Cloudian appliances. So one of the things about S3 compatible object storage is, this is an industry standard. So what we're seeing is a lot of application development companies structure their software so that you can use an S3 compatible storage target as part of your solution. So obviously we've focused on Veeam today, and the ability to use S3 storage for Veeam to make it as cost effective as possible. But here's an example of a number of other companies that are using S3 as a way to allow automatic archiving of data. So and this list of companies just keeps growing. So you can probably comment on that a little more, John.
Yeah, Paul, as you already said, the S3 has become the standard for cloud-based storage, and what that means is now there's a language that all these app developers can write to. So we've been working with Veeam for years to back up enterprise data, Office 365 data, but as you said, there's a lot of other use cases as well. For example, you can use this to offload data from your filers. So perhaps you have NetApp or Isilon filers. You can offload that data into this environment using software that's available from NetApp, Isilon, and third-party providers such as Comprise that make it really easy to offload data from those filers to free up space. About 60% of data on filers has typically not been accessed in the last year. That 60% can easily be offloaded into the HostedBizz environment. It's still immediately available. It's going to cost you a lot less to store it there. Other examples would be big data. So with Hadoop and Splunk, you can use that HostedBizz environment as a repository for Hadoop data or Splunk data. If you've got pure storage devices, you can use their feature to CloudSnap to offload snapshots of your block data from your on-prem pure devices to HostedBizz. Another example is SME. If your company uses Dropbox and you've got that data out in the public cloud right now, that data is exposed, right? That Dropbox account can be hacked. With SME, you can create a Dropbox-like experience where your data is kept entirely in Canada, where your data is protected. It can is much less vulnerable to hacking than it would be out in the Dropbox environment, but you still have that exact same simplicity of user experience, and you get the ability to see how that data is being used in ways that Dropbox doesn't offer. So these are just a few examples of the kind of things you can do with that S3 storage in the HostedBizz environment. And the advantage, of course, for you is that it's managed by HostedBizz, it's cost-effective, and it is kept entirely in Canada. So it's got everything going for it. Back to you, Paul.
I think Dave was going to talk specifically about what Veeam and S3.
Yeah, if we look at this slide here, there's a lot going on here, so let me unpack it for you. There's a lot of different ways to look at how you satisfy offline, immutable, air-gapped kinds of storage solutions. Some of those might already be easily available to you in your data center. Some of those might be things that you want to consider going forward. The variety of different techniques. Physical tape still can play a role. Replicated virtual machines that ideally are powered off and can be put into a different kind of an authentication framework so that you can limit access. Primary storage snapshots is but one notion. One of my favorites, particularly for some organizations, is rotating hard drives or rotating media, meaning having an offline capability. But the thrust of this conversation has really been about the bottom element there, immutable backups, ensuring that backups with this S3 object lock and S3 compatible devices such as Cloudian can automatically, very seamlessly ensure that you are well protected. Again, I think the seamless piece can't really be overstated. You really want to make sure that this is going to be something that's just part and parcel of your proper data hygiene, that it's not something that you have to think about. But at the same time, we do want to encourage you, what you do have to think about is continuing to educate those in your organization, particularly about phishing attacks, and consider, if you have not already adopted a solution that can offer immutability, air-gapped storage for your backup and recovery solutions, that you do so sooner rather than later, because the threats that are out there are rising, and the threats are going after backup data in particular. And in this day and age, it's just a matter of time, is oftentimes the belief of many analysts, not of if. So you can try to do everything right, but unfortunately, you really do need to be well prepared, and you need to be prepared in advance. So that's really been part of the goal of this whole conversation. I will mention before I turn it back over to you, Paul, that for those that are listening, we do have an attachment and links section. There are a number of items in there, about 16 items, everything from website URLs to get to specific information to solution briefs about portions of or combinations of everything that we've described, as well as some best practices advice documents. And finally, also a copy of this presentation itself.
That's great. That's great, Dave. Appreciate that. So, just in terms of wrapping up, what we wanted to do today is really describe, how having a robust ransomware protection plan is really critical. And as Dave mentioned there, the issue is not whether you're going to get attacked, is when you're going to get attacked. So it's really essential that these plans are in place and you put them in place for your customers. We've discussed Veeam data protection, and the introduction of object lock really then allows us to have truly immutable backups. And I love the word immutable. It's easy to understand. It's easy for your customers to understand what it means. And having the ability to deliver these capabilities cost effectively is does real progress on the part of Veeam and Cloudian. From a HostedBizz perspective, we partner very strongly with these companies, and we do have a complete solution of cloud services that this is we've talked a small part of today. So reach out to us if you've got any questions about cloud in general, or migrating, or any other questions about the cloud. So that's what we had for you today. We have some more information we'll share in a minute, but I want to remind everybody that you can ask questions through the Bright Talk link. We've got a number of questions already, so I'm going to act as my role is really overhead to the experts that are on the call. I'm going to pass out these questions appropriately. So Dave, we have a question that I'll read out to you. So what happens if an already infected file is backed up? I think I understand that if ransomware attacks take place, the backup files are safe, but if the ransomware is slowly implementing itself behind the scenes and that is getting backed up, is there anything that can be done about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, particularly if you've got a day zero vulnerability, as to the point that was made there. It was backed up prior to the point where potentially the payload had been unleashed and an antidote or antivirus signature had been created. One of the things that has been kind of interesting for me to understand in the last year is that the leading antivirus providers, they often have a signature file or remediation available within 24 hours of discovery of the threat. The challenge is that deployment of that appropriate signature file may not have taken place. There is a capability within Veeam called Secure Restore that basically gives you the opportunity to go back and get this right, meaning if now you update your antivirus software of choice, just Windows Defender, ESET, or just put a few examples, whatever that may be, that then when you go to restore an older backup file, we can run that process, that restoration in a fenced off, meaning a non-production network attached sandbox, and then run the updated antivirus software definition construct against that data payload. Much like the immutability checkbox, it's a very seamless procedure. It is a checkbox to enable the capability, and it's a radio button to choose what happens, meaning you can say fail on this backup job at the point anything was encountered, meaning a virus, or I want to continue scanning the rest of the entire backup data and see if we can remediate against those eventualities. But short answer, I gave a detailed explanation, but the short answer is there actually are some things that can be done to try to even counteract some past issues.
That's good. And again, this is something that HostedBizz deal with on a regular basis. So, we're getting a number of customers per week hit with ransomware attacks, and we're helping rebuild their infrastructure without the viruses in them, and it's a process to go through, and we've got a lot of expertise in doing that. So and Veeam have the tools that really help in that process as well, as described by Dave. We have another question here which I'll take, and the question is for IT providers who are just getting into the security space. What sort of support does HostedBizz provide to new partners? So it's a good question. We've got a great deal of expertise in cloud and in data protection and other security products as well. So if we are going to introduce Veeam to your customers, we can help you. We can write proposals for you. We can do proof of concepts free of charge. We can run trials, and we can actually set up Veeam in total for you as well. So we can do all of those things, and there's no charge for onboarding customers at all. There's just the monthly charge once the service is up and running. So we can help you propose to your customers. We can help set it up for you, and we can help train your staff as well. So that is what we're doing every day for our our other partners and so on. So that's a good question. There's another question. I think a follow-up on the one that you had there, Dave, is around protecting against your backups being infected. Is there any documentation on how to do the restore process that you described?
Yeah, the short answer is that absolutely is. From a Veeam documentation perspective, all of the product documentation is actually made available on the internet. So our help center does describe this secure restore capability. Additionally, in the attachment and link section for this webcast, we do have a couple different things. One is a website, a microsite actually, that we stood up on off of Veeam.com about ransomware in particular. We've got some great links there to go into some more detail. And we do also have a link to a best practices PDF or a white paper that my colleague Rick Vanover spent a lot of time in, did detailed that what I mentioned earlier, as well as other best practices, everything from delineation of responsibilities and separation of credentials to some of the finer points around S3 and immutability, S3 object lock and immutability, and that secure restore.
That's good. We've got a number of questions here, so we've got little less than 10 minutes left. So we're gonna rattle through some of the questions we've received, and I'm going to pass this one to Dave as well. What is the 3-2-1 rule, and given immutable backups, does it still apply?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. If you've been in the industry a while, you may have heard it. 3-2-1. Certainly, Veeam espouses that. But to be fair, others do in the industry as well. It's an industry term, not a specific vendor term. If you're not familiar with it, 3-2-1, those numbers signify our best practice would be to have 3 or more copies of your data, meaning in addition to production, ideally on 2 different pieces of media so they could be read by different kinds of infrastructure. So that could be a certain disk device, and that could be a cloud capability, or that could be a tape, that could be a SSD drive that's on a USB interface, etc. And then the one used to be one that was off-site, meaning geographically dispersed to protect against eventualities such as a specific data construct, such as a natural disaster, a flood, or even something that was man-made, say a riot taking place. So that's 3-2-1 historically. The notion there of immutability, what we've been expanding on is then adding 3-2-1-1-0. The additional digits are one of those copies ideally is going to be immutable, such as the S3 object lock capability that Cloudian provides through Veeam policy. And then the 0 is ensuring that you've got a backup with 0 errors associated with it. Going back to that sort of statement or bad joke that it's very difficult to recover data that you haven't backed up, and then the caveat on that being it's very difficult to recover data that doesn't have integrity. So that last one and that last 0 is ensuring that you've got integrity. The one that it's immutable, hasn't been compromised, and 0, there are 0 errors due to automated testing or capability called Sure Backup, where being with the process of taking the backup that can run additional verification. Again, not manual, automated and part of the platform.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. And then we've got quite a large number of questions here. So there's a question here for, I'm going to ask Jon, why would you use S3 compatible object storage as a backup target versus a traditional SAN or NAS network attack storage?
Yeah, traditionally, storage has been thought of as being SAN or NAS, and object storage is relatively new on the scene. And really, it's become the storage of the cloud for one really good reason, which is S3. The S3 API is the communication language, and that is really made for communicating with remote storages in the cloud. So, for example, when you're backing up data to HostedBizz using the S3 API, which you get as a process that's very efficient. S3 is built for that long-distance communication over WAN links, which may be, sometimes less than reliable. So just as an example, one example of why this is great, the idea of multi-part upload. If your communication of that backup data gets interrupted at some point due to a glitch in the line, you don't have to start over. You only have to start over with a small part of it, but the rest of the transmission is intact. So what this does is it makes that backup process very reliable. This exact same thing happens in reverse. You have the ability to move that data from HostedBizz back to your environment also very reliably. So S3 is the language of the cloud for a host of good reasons, of which multi-part backup is just one example.
Yeah, it's a great answer, Jon. We have another question here. Typically, when a customer commits to Office 365 backup, do they put this in place for all employees or a subset of employees? That's a good question. I can talk about what we HostedBizz see in the market. So typically we see Office 365 to be put in place for all employees. That's by far the most common use case. So every mailbox is then protected. For some companies where they don't deem that's required, or they don't have the budget for it, we quite often see then senior management and IT staff and anybody that's got access to IT infrastructure being the mailboxes that are chosen for backups. So it doesn't matter to us whether it's all the users or a subset of the users. The product is available on a per mailbox basis, and then we bill. HostedBizz then bill on a per mailbox as well. So there's a fixed price per user for that Office 365 backup, and that's a forever retention as well that we provide as part of that service. But it's a good question. So I think what we're going to wrap up now. I want to sincerely thank Jon and Dave for participating. They are great partners of HostedBizz. We have a huge number of joint customers between us, and I want to sincerely thank Dave and Jon for taking the time to share their experiences. So I want to thank everybody for attending, and I think with that I'm going to pass you back to Audrey to wrap up.
That's all we have for everybody today. Thank you again so much for joining us, and have a great day.